Hi, it's the 23rd of February 2015, and I am making this video about something near and dear to my heart. And it all started with the purchase of my first home on my own in 2008. I purchased a condominium at 2721 2nd Street, unit number 107, Santa Monica, California, 90405. And I did a little facelift, fixed it up, and moved in, and had bought it from Bear Stearns right as they were going bankrupt, right as they were going belly up. And the Fed bailed them out. And I remembered feeling so odd about the bank being bailed out for bad business practices. And I was like, that is no integrity, that there's corruption, and there's no punishment. It's like as if they didn't do anything wrong and they just kept skating along. And I was like, that is really weird. Wow. But you know, who am I? I'm one little person, right? So I just paid my mortgage, and I paid it on time or early, and I put a little extra on the principal, and I had a 30-year fixed rate, and then I refinanced through Wells Fargo, who was my initial mortgage. Well, it wasn't my initial. I actually had a mortgage broker who then they transferred the mortgage to Wells Fargo. And so then I was paying someone else first United, I think it was first, and then it was Wells Fargo, and then I refinanced through Wells Fargo, and that was a feat all in and of itself. I ended up having to go to the president of Wells Fargo because of the service that I was getting was so bad. I didn't realize that the bank is actually not on my side. I was asking questions about the mortgage and wanting to know certain things, and they were just basically not giving me any answers. And they closed my refinance almost in a way to get rid of me, like shut me up. And so I was kind of like, okay, well, at least I got a better percentage rate, but I'm still not comfortable with not having. I feel like I'm being kept in the dark on some things about the truth in lending and the mortgage insurance and that kind of stuff that I was paying for mortgage insurance, right? And so, and I had been told that I could drop the mortgage insurance at some certain time, but then they weren't actually telling me when that could ever take place. And by then I'd owned my home for over 5 years, for almost 5.5 years. So I began to do research, and in the meantime, I kept coming across these stories of corruption from the news, from people that I knew going through certain things, from situations that I had happened to me where there was just corrupt business practice. And I was like, I've always lived a relatively sheltered life. I've liked to pay cash, not run credit cards up. I've kept myself sort of sheltered in that way. And I have Asperger's, and it's a little bit, I don't look at the world the same way as many people do, and I expect a level of integrity. I'm shocked when people don't have it, rather than the other way around. A lot of the people that I know are like, oh, what do you expect? This is the way the world runs. And I'm like, really? That's not okay. We're expected to have integrity. When I went to the bank, I had to provide my tax returns. I had to provide all kinds of documentation, right? So how is it that they aren't expected to have integrity back? It's a contract between two energies coming together to make an agreement. And so there has to be integrity on both sides. So I began to do research, and I found out some really interesting things that were extremely disturbing. I found out that the truth in lending document that is signed during signing all the mortgage docs, which I did, the bank never divulged their end, that they actually make up to 20 times the amount of my loan. They get that amount of money. Whatever my loan was, they get that amount of money times 20 from the Federal Reserve. So they're making money because I brought them business, but they don't divulge that that's what they're getting. We are supposed to both know what each other's getting out of the deal. That's called truth in lending. You know, it's not a one-way street. They're actually involved in the contract. So, and if they weren't involved in the contract, then they have no business being a party to it. So I found that piece out, and I also found out that the Federal Reserve has nothing to do with benefiting human beings. They are a privately owned bank. They take money from taxes paid from hard labor of people in this country, and they decide inflation rates. They print the money, and the money that we use is debt. It's not even, it's a bill. It's like you pay a bill with a bill. Think about that. That makes absolutely no sense. So it's actually money printed out of thin air, and then they decide on the inflation rate, whether it goes up, whether it goes down. And I thought, who are these people? And how is it that they keep acquiring lavish lifestyles and homes, and they don't ever pay for their indiscretions? You know, in business, they get bailed out. They bail the banks out because the banks bring them business, right? Supposedly. The banks require them to print money. I became aware of this whole world that is not discussed ever. We grow up in this country under this umbrella, supposedly having to operate under this system that we know nothing about. Not one day in class, as a kid growing up, all the way through university, did I ever get taught how to incorporate myself, how to actually succeed in this financial system, which that means there's no transparency. That means that there's fraud committed right off the bat because it's not a level playing field. And if you don't have a family that can teach you those kinds of things, you're screwed. And so I did not come from a family that even uttered the word incorporate. So I then began to do more research. And I figured out that in 1302 AD, Pope Boniface wrote something called Unum Sanctum, a papal bull in human blood, declaring that the Vatican and the Holy See, which is the Pope, whoever the Pope is at the time is the Holy See. You know, that all-seeing eye that's on our paper money? Anyway, it's tied together with the Vatican, actually. And so in 1302, there was a declaration that has not ever been revoked, and it had no expiration date, that the Vatican owns every living being and every bit of land and on the earth, on planet Earth. And they had no way of organizing and keeping track of all the people that were born in a very good manner, but they did the best they could, you know, keeping records and such. But then as time went on and things got more sophisticated, in 1666, Britain, the United Kingdom, they adopted that papal bull and then sort of added, it's like a constitution with an amendment. They added their own bit to it so that they could actually benefit from the power and the money by joining forces with the Vatican. And they adopted something called Quacibi Act, the Quacibi Act. And what that meant was that basically humanity has basically been enslaved by a very small group of families at the top of this pyramid that is also on our paper money, that decided that they were worthy, and that anybody underneath wasn't. Because if you think about it, anybody born on this planet is the same. There isn't anyone more worthy than someone else. However, if you don't know this information, or you're not part of the group that holds the information secret, then you're by default fucked, and you are serving them by default because you don't know. It's like ignorance is not bliss in this situation, because you're actually enslaved because you don't know something. And even when you know it, what do you do? Because that's the thing that I came up against, is because once I started to look into history and I saw how all of this transpired and this corporate structure was birthed out of declarations that were made, self-declarations. Who the fuck is the Pope? No one. He doesn't get to declare himself owner of everything. Says who? Himself? Oh, I can say I heard something from God too. That is the most asinine thing I have ever heard, that he thinks he owns everyone and everything. Or the Vatican does, and he's claiming it for the Vatican. That is insanity at its best. So then to take it a step further and for the Royal British Crown to get involved and say, oh, well, we went in on this action, and we'll find a way to help the Vatican by creating a split in the law, which is a split between land law, which is common law, and ocean law, which is maritime admiralty law. And that originally was to help trade, you know, by cargo ship, to be kept track of and traded properly, or what have you, supposedly. However, there was corruption in the system because there was also built in a way to incorporate every human being that was born without their knowledge. And what I mean by that is, when you have a baby, anyone that has a baby and they record the live birth with the government, You send in that paper of live birth record to the government. Well, on the back side of that, what you do not know happens is that the government has a way of declaring your baby lost at sea through admiralty, corporate maritime admiralty law. They declare your baby lost at sea, and then they send you a birth, as in BERTH. It's a play on vowels. Back in the day in Latin could be interchanged. An E could be an I or U or an A. And so it's a subtle change of the vowel. And so that happened in 1666, where any live birth record was then flipped behind the back of the parents. The parents had no idea that the child was being declared dead and lost at sea. Well, declared lost at sea. And if the parents didn't know that it was declared lost at sea, they would never know to come and claim it, right? Well, what happens when you don't claim property after 7 years? Yeah, well, it goes and is owned by the Royal British Crown Corporation. That's what happens. So that is why the state can come in to your home and take your child, you know? And you can just not, you won't be able to stop them, because why? You actually registered your own child. You gifted. They have a way of doing the paperwork so that it is like a gift. When you send in the live birth record, that is like a gift, as if you were donating to a charity. That is how they have orchestrated the paperwork on the back end that you never see. And then when you get the birth certificate in the mail for your child, you have then, because they certify the live birth, that process was registering your own child. It's kind of like registering your car with the state. Well, the state can come take your car, because for the same reason, you voluntarily registered your car with the state. You gave it to the state without knowing what you were doing. You gave away your property no longer, and they require you to do it, but you don't even know that you don't need to do it. You actually, it's fraud, but because no one stops it and no one speaks up about this stuff, it's like a racket. They make more money by people registering away their belongings to corporate entities, which is what the Royal British Crown Corporation is. Now, I want you to go look at your bills, and they're always in all caps. And the reason for that is when the live birth record is turned in to the Royal British Crown, because I don't care who you are, I don't care what country a person is born in, they are registered through the Royal Crown Corporation of England. And they are directly tied to the Vatican. And that is a control mechanism on the population. It's a control mechanism on keeping track of their assets. We are their assets. We are like live energy. We human beings run on electricity, and all of the things that we produce in our lifetimes is the free energy that is getting harnessed by these entities that are in control, self-declared control of the world, without explaining themselves in transparency. So without our consent truly, or our knowledge truly, because we're not taught this stuff in school, we are pawns and assets, and we're actually traded on the stock market. We are bonds. When you look at your birth certificate, it is bonded. On the bottom, it'll have a number, and you are an actual commodity that is traded on the stock market like stocks in a company. You are just a number, and what you do and how much you produce is traded upon. So when I found all this stuff out, my God, this video is 20 minutes long. Wow. Oh my God. Okay.